And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Arcane Static, and today we're going to talk about 4 common myths that you might still be hearing about Japan, and whether or not they're true. So here's one that I hear a lot from weeaboos. A lot of, like, the people who really think that they know a lot about, like, the stuff that happens in Japan and all that, despite having never been there before. I actually met a gentleman before I came back over here last time at a convention who was trying his best to impress some girls in cosplay by talking about all the stuff he knows about Japan. And this is one of the things that he said. He said, yeah, no buildings in Japan have a 4th floor because it's super unlucky to have the number 4. And I was like, well, why do you think that? And he goes, well, 4 is an unlucky number. And I was like, well, why is 4 an unlucky number? He couldn't answer that to me. The number 4 is pronounced shi in Japanese, which is a homonym for the word for death, shi. They're just written kind of differently. Here's the number 4, and here's the character for the word death. The really common myth that buildings don't have 4th floors because of that unlucky thing sort of stopped being a thing like 50 to 100 years ago. The propensity for that kind of superstition has seriously died out with the last 2 generations or so. Like, the building that I live in right now was built in 1980-something, and it's got a 4th floor. In fact, the 4th floor is the first floor on which people can live, because the 1st floor is like the entryway floor, and then the 2nd and 3rd floors are the earthquake protection floors. So there's nothing on them in case shit decides to, like, collapse downwards. It has, like, a airbag or something, I don't know. But anyway, there are 4th floors in buildings. People live on them. Now, if we're talking about something like, for instance, why there are generally no women who live on the 1st floor of a building, that's still a thing. That's a cultural thing more than anything else. Apparently, it is a widely held belief that women will feel more safe if they live on the 2nd floor of a building rather than the 1st floor, because a burglar will be less likely to come up to the 2nd floor of a 2-story building if it can just rob something on the 1st floor. So that's real, but in terms of 4th floors not existing, it's a myth. It's not a thing anymore. Not a thing anymore at all. So there's another myth that Japan is just super technologically advanced, that everything is robots and that you can order something and it flies in on a little drone or some bullshit like that, which has a root in reality. Japan is really good with electronics and robotics, and like is doing real good stuff for technology, but most of the interesting technology that it puts together, it then doesn't use. It makes some cool technology, and then will like implement some of it maybe a little bit if it's fun to have around, or like would increase the morale of the people who are involved with it or something like that. But for the most part, Japan is still a very pencil and paper society. Like, yes, you can get like robots that show up in department stores and stuff like that will like greet you when you walk in. You do have access to the internet and that kind of stuff, but like in terms of being able to, for instance, get free Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is not as common in Japan as people would make you think. Yes, you can get Wi-Fi from places like McDonald's or Starbucks or other like cafes or things that broadcast it on the street or whatever, but those are in big cities where like a lot of people already are. But if you're anywhere outside of one of the big metropolitan areas, you're not gonna have that kind of freedom nearly as much. So you'll actually probably end up being offline more than you would anywhere else, really. Like, if you're from America, you're generally used to being able to get free Wi-Fi in places. And it's true in the metropolitan areas, but outside of that, it's not that great. Like, to put this in perspective, right? Japan, the place that is touted to be the most technologically advanced robots and magic and shit, they still use fax machines as part of, like, everyday business. They still use, like, paper ledgers for stuff that happens in banks. Online banking kind of exists, but it's not a big thing like it is in other places in the world. It's kind of confusing as to why that is, but then you have to remember, Japan has a pretty long life expectancy, and the country is still being run by the old people who hate technology. And they are one of the biggest problems that faces the country right now, is the fact that the younger people are being discouraged from taking political or official office because the old people still have it, and they would have to work with the old people who hate the young people and the technology that they stand for. So Japan is still being run by the old fogies who were alive 250 fucking years ago. And that's why Japan is having so many different, like, socioeconomic troubles right now, is because a lot of the people who are in leading positions refuse to grow with the technology that the world has put together so far. So there's another myth, and I hear this one just stupidly a lot by tourists who haven't been to Japan but plan on going, and it's something that they apparently worry about a lot, and it's that public transportation is really hard to navigate. And that could not be further from the truth, at least in terms of the trains. Buses are a bitch. Buses are hard to navigate because they're buses, and there's just like a ton of little stops where you go here and then go around this way, and like getting an actual map of the bus system is damn near impossible. But if you're going somewhere by train, it cannot be easier. When you go into the train station, they have the ticket window thing, right? And above, or the ticket machine, and above that there's a big map. And there's like a place with a little red star that's like, you are here. And then it has all the other places that you can go on the lines that you are on right then. And it'll tell you, like, if you want to go this station, 180 yen. This one up here, 240 yen, or whatever like that. And then when you buy a ticket, it asks you, how much yen of a ticket do you need to get where you're going? So you push 280 or whatever like that, you put in your 280 yen, and then you can use that 280 to go to anywhere in the system that would require 280 or fewer yen to go to. Furthermore, everyone is always like, oh yeah, but like I don't speak any Japanese, so it's gonna be so hard, but all of the signs are written in Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and English. So you pretty much can't miss it, especially if you're in the Tokyo metropolitan area, or indeed any of the bigger metropolitan areas of the country. They make all of the announcements on the train in both Japanese and English. So you'll be listening and it'll be like, Mamonaku, Asakusa, Asakusa desu. The next stop is Asakusa. And so it's like you don't have any excuses as to why like you'd miss that unless you weren't paying attention. Which is fair. If you're not paying attention, though, it's your fault. It's not the fault of the system here. It's super easy, and the easier bit is you can also get a thing called a Suica, or in other cases a Passmo. They're basically all the same shit. It's an IC card that you put money onto so that you don't have to buy tickets. The card itself costs 500 yen, and it comes with like some money put onto it already. And you just basically, when you go to a place, you'll walk through the ticket gate, touch the card, and the gate opens, and then you walk through, and then wherever you're getting off, you touch the card, and if you have enough money on the card, the gate will open, and if you don't have enough money on the card, it'll say, use the recharge machine right over there. And there's a recharge machine where you put your card in, put some money in, and then you're done. It's really easy. The only reason that people seem to think that is because back before the last time there were Tokyo Olympics, Japan still hadn't really internationalized their systems very much. So it was kind of difficult like 30 fucking years ago. And that myth is just propagated and propagated and propagated. But like, especially now with the next set of Tokyo Olympics coming up here in 2020, this place is like getting super internationalized, so there should be no problems. They're actually even developing a new system kind of like the Suica card, except for it's for foreigners. So when you, like, go to the machines or whatever, it'll automatically detect what language you're using, display everything in that language, it'll be easier. So, like, don't worry so much about your public transportation, because it is not as hard as the myths will propagate. Another myth that I like to hear from weeaboos is that everybody likes anime and manga, and they watch anime, and they read manga, and they listen to J-pop all the time. And that's all that they ever do, and to some extent, that might be true, maybe. But anime and manga are a piece of Japanese culture, certainly, but they are not the only piece of Japanese culture. There are people who like anime and manga. I, for instance, do. I've got a couple volumes of School Live and Seven Deadly Sins just sitting right over there. But I am foreign, so I don't count. Now, if you talk to any of the, like, kids that I teach at school or whatever like that, you can ask them, what's your favorite manga or what's your favorite anime, and they'll all have an answer. And it all tends to be whichever thing is the most popular right now. So a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, man, I really like, you know, the new Dragon Ball Super, or whatever, because that's what's out right now. But before that, it was, yeah, man, I really like One Piece. And before that, it was like, yeah, man, I really like Naruto, and that kind of bullshit. So, like, yes, people do like it here. You can also buy, in the convenience stores, just tons of weekly serialized manga magazines, where you will find, like, adult-style, you know, series in there that deal with heavier themes, like, businessmen, and, like, assassinations, and espionage and all that other kind of heavier stuff, which you can find here, and adults do enjoy reading manga and stuff still. It is less of a kiddie thing than the American media would like to portray it as, but even so, it's not like that's the only thing that anyone ever reads. There's still a lot of people who read books, like normal, actual, like, novels and nonfiction books and stuff like that, and that happens quite a lot. To the point where, in America, bookstores are kind of dying out, but in Japan they are flourishing, because people still like to read, which is nice. In terms of, like, anime and stuff, a lot of the stuff that gets broadcast on television right now is the sort of, like, Yokai Watch and Pokemon and other kind of kiddie stuff. It's less of a thing for adults to watch anime on television, and more for them to buy stuff on DVD and watch it, or something like that, because the more adult series tends to not be broadcast on television very much. But they do get broadcast at some point, probably really late at night, and then the period between when it's broadcast and when it's put on DVD in Japan is actually quite small. So you can go out and, like, buy the cool DVD of whatever series you're into at that time. Manga is more popular than anime in Japan. Full stop. More people consume manga than anime. Full stop. There's no arguing that. It is just more popular. But it is not to say that everybody only likes anime and manga. And some of the most popular television stuff is comedy, live comedy stuff. Slapstick things and, like, panel shows and stuff like that. You'll actually kind of be hard-pressed to find anything that's not, like, a young kids-centered anime on television during, like, normal human hours. In terms of manga, yeah, people read it, but people don't just read it. So that one is actually the least wrong of the four that we've talked about so far. You can talk about anime or manga with pretty much anybody, and so long as you find a series that they know about, that you also know about, you'll have some common ground. Well, anyway, that does it for these 4 myths about Japan. This is the first Japan-centered episode that I've made in months and months, because, you know, but I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm gonna see if I can't do more stuff like this and tell you guys about things in Japan, take you places and stuff, especially when my camera comes in like 3 or 4 days, which will be super nice. But yes, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, the like and subscribe buttons are waiting just below this video to help debunk some of the myths about Japan. You can also follow my socials. That's the Facebook and Twitter that are down in the description box. I'm sure they would like the love as well. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.